So the news that we knew was coming was confirmed yesterday. Liam Lawson is going to replace Daniel Ricciardo at RB for the rest of the 2024 Formula 1 season. I've already done a video reacting to that. I've already done a few videos about Ricciardo as well, just going over his legacy in Formula 1, about why it's probably the right time for him to leave the sport and how good of a driver he was in Formula 1 back in the day. But I saw a statement recently from one of my good friends who is Australian, who is a Daniel Ricciardo fan as well, someone I'm not going to name in this video because I don't want any hate to come his way, because it's a very provocative statement, and that statement was that Daniel Ricciardo's Formula 1 career ended the moment he left Red Bull, i.e. the moment that he moved to Renault. Now, this is an interesting statement for sure, and while I don't entirely agree with it, I do agree with it partially. In a sense, if you're being really harsh, I can see where this guy's coming from. Now, the reason why I say this is because at the end of the day, his best days were behind him by the time that he joined Renault. Maybe not in terms of his overall skill level, but in terms of his results. I mean, the lion's share of his podiums, his point scores, his wins were all at Red Bull. In fact, every one of his wins, bar one, was at Red Bull. There is that just one win at McLaren in 2021 in Italy. I honestly think as well that's probably the result that saved his career at McLaren. I think if it wasn't for that, they probably would have got rid of him at the end of 21. But as it was, he stayed on for another season. Now, I sort of see what the guy's saying, because at the end of the day, at that time, Red Bull were one of the fastest teams in Formula 1. There were three clear top teams in Formula 1. There was Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull. And everybody else was battling it out for best of the rest. Not too dissimilar to like what we see now in Formula 1, where there are four top teams: McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari. And the rest of the teams are battling it out for 9th and 10th most of the weekends. You might get the odd Hulkenberg or someone like that in there, or Alonso or someone really sticking it to them, but it's rare. It doesn't happen too often. And that's what we saw in that era as well. And Red Bull were one of those top teams, but I'm going to defend Ricciardo here. I'm going to defend Ricciardo because the cynics will say that he moved to Renault for the money, and that was undoubtedly a factor because, you know, he's going out of the Red Bull family for the first time in Formula 1. You know, even when he was at HRT, he was still like a reserve driver for Toro Rosso, who's still part of the Red Bull system. He left the Red Bull system for the first time in 2019 when he joined Renault. Now, the money was part of it. Of course, anybody who saw Drive to Survive Season 1 will know that Cyril Abiteboul, who was then the boss of Renault, offered him a lot of money, and Christian Horner was not very pleased about that fact. But at the end of the day, on top of that as well, he would have seen the writing on the wall. He would have seen a very young, very fast Max Verstappen who, in truth, was starting to beat him by this time. In 2018, I'm pretty sure Verstappen finished ahead of Daniel Ricciardo in the championship. He might have even done the same in 2017 as well, but they were around the same kind of performance. Even in 2016, you know, Max was almost there in terms of, you know, Ricciardo's performance, and this was a time when Max was only 18, 19 years of age. He was extremely young still, and his ceiling was a lot higher. Ricciardo by that time had probably reached his peak in terms of his performance, and he knew that he was never going to win a world championship with Max Verstappen in the same car, because he knew that Verstappen was going to beat him. Deep down, I think that's what happened. And that's why he moved to Renault, because he obviously thought that Renault would have been good enough to challenge for championships. And in fact, they did win championships in the mid-2000s. It's not like it's never happened. Even back in the mid-80s, they almost won a few championships with Alain Prost back in the day. And this is a team with a lot of pedigree and a works engine as well, the Renault engine, albeit not a particularly good engine, but still the works team. So there was still a chance there for him. Winning a championship is extremely rare in a car that is a customer. It's very rare that happens. Even if you look at McLaren back in the day, they were effectively the Mercedes works team. McLaren this year will become the first customer team to win a championship that's not a works team since Brawn back in 2009, and that was a freak season. So he obviously moved to Renault with the promise of him winning championships there, and it never happened. The car was never quite good enough for it. I mean, he still got some good results, you know. First season, no podiums, but second season, he did get a few podiums. Results were on the up. And then surprisingly, he moved to McLaren, again with the promise of a team that could win championships, a team that has won a lot of championships in the past. And in fact, now in 2024, that vision is happening just a few years after he joined. So clearly he saw something in the team that was worthy of his faith, but he just didn't perform. he just didn't perform. For whatever reason, the car did not work for him. He took on a big wage again, and then some people might say it's a sellout because of that, but if you're not in this game to earn a living and be comfortable for the rest of your life, like now Ricciardo has no worries for the rest of his life. He is rich, you know, he has no financial worries. As long as he doesn't do anything too stupid with his money, he'll be fine. He'll have no problems. And taking those big salaries at Renault and McLaren will definitely help with that. So I do see the point that, you know, his best days were behind him by the time he joined Renault, but there was still life in the old dog, yeah. We saw that at times. We saw that in Italy in 21. We saw that with his podiums for Renault. But unfortunately, when he came back for RB, he was beaten all ends up by Tsunoda. He had two really good performances. That drive in Mexico, that qualifying in Mexico last year, and also the sprint race in Miami this year too. Apart from that, he's been really flash in the pan stuff. And he's not been consistent enough, and he's rightfully been dropped in my opinion. And it's sad. But what do you guys think? Do you think my friend has a point? Is he right about this? Did Ricciardo's career end the second that he joined Renault in Formula 1? I respectfully disagree, but I do see where he's coming from. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, keep it subscribed, like, share, comment, ring the bell as well on the F1Chronicle.com to see much more F1 news and opinion pieces just like this.